So it's not just about how do I communicate with my partner. Note, we've been talking since the very beginning, even though this is about relationships, about the guy in this case, the guy themselves. That's the signal. And if you're not going to take the steps to take care of yourself, are you ready to do the difficult work in the relationship?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me, and welcome to the Glen Gilbert Connection, where we cultivate relationship wisdom for the seasoned man. I'm your host, Glen Gilbert, and joining me today are two special guests, Ashley Knebal.
You got it.
And JD Wyneken. Both are certified human potential coaches, and both are hosts of the Staying Power podcast. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us. Happy to be
thanks
here.
for having us on.
Perfect. So I just wanted to jump right in and just get a little background as to how you, like the shimmy.
So excited, sorry.
How you both can help.
This is normal.
This is normal? Okay.
This is normal for her.
Nice.
Yeah.
How you both can help, say, those guys that are in a long-term relationship or in a relationship or in a marriage where they find themselves, and I'd like to say, coasting along. I'd interpret that as kind of going downhill, where they're coasting along. They're not sure why the relationship is maybe failing or not going the way they like or getting the output they like. Or even for those guys that were in a longer-term relationship and have now divorced and they're unsure of where to go. Basically, how do these guys that are suffering, what do they need to do, and how should they go about kind of turning things around? Basically, how should they level back up?
That's a big question. And an important one. I think it might help right here at the outset to explain a little bit about our approach as certified human potential coaches, because it is its own approach. The type of coaching we do is first and foremost focused on the person themselves. So while we do coach a lot of people in relationships and clients bring relationship challenges to us, we spend a lot of time talking about the person in the relationship, one right in front of us. So to answer your question in a general sense, broad term that we can sort of dig into, is they start with themselves, right? The work is theirs. To improve one's relationship, one must do the work themselves. One must go through the process of self-discovery, go through the process of emotional integration, go through the process of learning how to sit with themselves, both all the things they like about themselves and the things they don't, whatever emotions they're feeling. And then in that process, by better connecting with themselves, they can better navigate and see for themselves what are the ways that they can better connect in their relationships. And that's generally true. Each one of these things is very, very specific to each of those people, right? So not everything always looks the same, what that might look like. Because every relationship is, of course, its own dynamic. You have two people, each hopefully entire individuals, right, who stand free, and then that relationship is almost like a third entity. Carl Jung called it the third. That's its own entity, and that's going to look different from couple to couple because each person is different person to person. So while generally speaking, what I've told you is the approach, it always looks different, doesn't it, Ashley, from person to person and what they end up focusing on and what they end up seeing.
Well, and I would say too, to your question, you were asking like, what should they be doing? I would actually reframe the question of what can they be doing? Because a should is already setting an expectation of like, this must be done or I will fail. And if it's more open of like, what can I do? That's a question of possibility. So they already feel like there is no ceiling, that they can improve, that there's hope, that there is potential. There's all these things that they're going to be able to strive for. Because if it's a should, as we've been taught, are usually stories that you have made up in your own head, your own expectations, your own fears. And you're like, I must level up to that. When in reality, it's not even reality.
Right.
So I would reframe the question just from the start for people who are listening or people who are coming to you with questions is let's look at what you can do in this situation.
Yeah, try it out, right? Because that's part of what we do too, is helping people connect with their inherent agency, their ability to make their own choices, to see what's the best thing for them, right? The capacity to do things differently.
Sure.
That's going to involve some some trial and error is the term I was looking for. Some trial and error. There are going to be some things that have worked, and we sometimes suggest that. Like, we've had clients before. We'll tell a client, we've had clients who've tried this.
Mm-hmm.
How does that sound to you? Is that something you might feel like could work for you? Yes or no? Okay, well then we say, okay, what would that look like in your context? How would that play out? What are some ways you could put this forward in your own life? And they're doing the choosing. So we're not the kind of coaches that, like a basketball coach writes up a play, tells everybody, you go out and do this exactly this way and you're going to score the basket. Ours is very collaborative, side by side, asking a lot of questions, helping them kind of see things maybe they haven't seen before, consider possibilities. I love that word, possibility, Ashley. I think it's key. And then they try those out and they come back to us whenever the next session is. We talk about how did it go. And hopefully over time, they're taking more of a sense of control over the choices they're making. And then they can show up better for themselves and then in their relationship.
Right. Yeah, for me, it was like years ago, and I was just in such a bad spot, just really devastated from a divorce, not sure where I was going, what I was doing, struggling with personal and professional relationships, wanting to prevent those from falling apart, and just not happy with the outcomes, and just asking myself, what do I need to do to change this? And that's kind of, I think for me, it was something to where I really had to be, I got to be forceful with myself. I can't just be like, oh, what should I do? And that's why I think I was phrasing it the way I was phrasing it. Like, I got to do something.
When you say forceful with yourself, I think that's a powerful word. What do you mean by that? Like, how did that play out and what did that look like?
I think in general, it was a way of motivating myself.
Okay.
I was totally sedating myself with video games. Just like it's during COVID, I'm not doing anything. I can't go outside. I can't even go mountain biking. I've got nothing going on. I'm new to the area. I'm just going to sit around. I'll work all day and then play video games all night and just repeat and rinse and repeat. And it's just, this is not, after a little while, like, this is not who I want to be. And this is not the outcomes I want at all. And I'm not having the relationships with my family, not having relationships with my friends that I want, and especially not having the relationships at work that I want. And I'm like, this has got to change. And it took me a while before I started really going, okay, what am I doing wrong? Kind of what both of you are alluding to is, where do you start? Where can we begin this? And it's looking at yourself, right? Looking at yourself and going, what am I accountable for? What can I start doing? And how can I start leveling up and improving myself?
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So you took some steps then to do different than what you were doing.
Yeah. I didn't reach out to anybody. I reached out to a few people, did some therapy, that kind of stuff. But the friend circle was pretty small. I wasn't depending upon my family at all. I was estranged from them. And so it was like, I have a few people from work and a couple guys I know, and that was really about it. So for me, there was a lot of isolation. And I'm like, I got to start changing something, and just start looking at, what am I accountable for? How am I accountable for the relationship outcomes? What am I doing that are causing problems with this? And just kind of going from there, really just looking in the mirror and go, what am I accountable for? And that really helped a lot. So.
I really like that. Good for you. I mean, to be honest, like, that's a really good resolution that you had for yourself. If you had no outside person like knocking on your door, like, wake up, Glenn, what are you doing?
Right.
There's sunshine outside. Like,
right. Oh, there is? Yeah. I was like, I guess there is.
On occasion, when the fog blows over.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and that's a great example of what we were talking about. What Ashley was mentioning is you decided you had to figure out, in order for you to figure out how to better show up in your relationships, you were taking a good look at your relationship with yourself and your own choices and your own environment. So you're isolating, right? And then there's a big difference between isolation and solitude. Right? Solitude can be a really productive place to be, a really
100%.
comforting place to be, right? We can recharge in solitude. 100%. We bleed out in isolation, right? And so that's a relationship dynamic with yourself. It sounds like you had to confront.
Absolutely.
And that's the thing. The phrase that keeps coming to mind is one I use a lot with clients, particularly men, and this seems to resonate with them. That's the common denominator in every relationship you've been in is you. This is true for women too, and anybody. But so when you look in the mirror, there's a really good chance that's the source of your biggest problems. But it's also the beginning of your solution. Same thing. And so you can take a look at it and go, yeah, I need to be accountable for this, this, and this. And we can certainly help people see that as coaches. But then we focus on, yes, and here's what you can actually do. You have the capacity, you have the agency, and we can give you suggestions. But if people can discover those for themselves and what works for them, what is aligned with their own values, with the things that matter to them in their own life, they're going to navigate so much more effectively towards the relationships that they want to have, whether it's a romantic one, with family members, with friends, with coworkers. And so that moment for you sounds like it was kind of a series of realizations taking you down a path that we would, as coaches, very much recognize.
Cool. Yeah, I was to the point where I'm just not digging the outcomes and I needed to change something. What do you both see as a major hurdle where someone comes to you and they're saying, yeah, I'm kind of bottoming out, or I'm stagnant, or I just got out of a relationship and I know something's wrong, and you've talked to them and you've given some suggestions, and it's a couple months later or maybe even a year later of just, okay, dude, you really haven't progressed. You got out of this 20-year relationship. We see what you're doing. You come to us. You've talked to us. But we're not seeing any improvement. Or would you even go there? Would you even say something like that? If you see that's like this guy's...
I would say that's not quite the verbiage that I would use, just from me as a coach.
Am I being too harsh? Am I just being...
I mean,
that's one of my
be
problems.
Harsh, but
I'm
as
too blunt.
As a potential coach, right? Like we focus on the potential. Our focus is forward. We don't always look at the past. You know, there are nuggets of knowledge and things that you can learn from in the past and then grow from, but we're very forward focused. Okay. A common thread that I find in clients and just people that I've talked to, if they have said that they're, working on things and yet there's no like factual progress to be able to see like, okay, you're making, efforts and whatnot, is they usually don't actually trust themselves. They have, decided that all my best decisions got me here, or a decision that I innately was like, that's probably a good idea, whether you said it out loud or in your mind. Every single day decisions compound and then you end up where you are in your life. And a lot of times people struggle because they're like, I thought I was making really good decisions and I ended up here. So how could my best ideas and decisions land me in such a bad spot? What am I supposed to do? That's
kind of what, JD, you were alluding to earlier, is what is the common denominator? And I told you guys this joke, and I'm just going to say it anyway. Like the guy goes to the therapist and is saying, oh, my past 5 wives are just horrible. I don't know what's going on with all these women out there. And the therapist is saying, what's the common denominator, my friend? And he goes, oh, I don't know.
I'm dating women.
Yeah, I'm dating women. What's the problem?
Yeah, right. But it's always outward.
Yes, this is really important to be like, okay, taking some accountability and just recognizing the I like to call it the output to where you got. Yeah.
Well, and there's things that you can do too. Like if you, and they sound so basic, and sometimes people have scoffed at them when they hear they're like, really? But I mean, like, assuming that if they're in such a bad spot, that maybe their environment that they live in is not up to par of where they would feel better about themselves. I'm like, go make your bed. Go clean up your kitchen.
Actually, that's my line. Go make your bed. Start
I stole it from you.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, do things very consistently every single day that you're going to show up for yourself and you can count on yourself that it's going to get done. And those sound so small and trivial, but really they are the most foundational blocks that you can build yourself up on.
Right.
Because how many times did people have said like, oh, I'm going to go out running today. And then they're like, I don't want to go. And then they cancel on themselves. Right. You are now losing trust and confidence in yourself. But if you actually keep your own word with yourself and you start building up your trust, you're like, wow, I can make good decisions and I can stick with them.
Well, and underneath that, even going to another layer of this, and something Ashley and I talk about quite a bit. You asked about what are the common hurdles. That is definitely one. Connected to that is, I see, an inability / unwillingness or difficulty in sitting with difficult feelings. With, in some cases, being able to name them. I've had clients who wouldn't be able to name an emotion if you put the card up in front of them that said that.
Oh, yeah.
You're angry, you're sad.
I can relate to that 100%.
Right, and I could too. Once upon a time.
Yeah, it used to be so difficult to be like, well, what do you want out of life? What do you want? I'm like, oh, I can't say anything. What do you provide to people? Oh, blah blah blah, and here's a list of 50 things I can provide to somebody else. But what can you provide for yourself? Nothing.
Right, and those feelings can be really tough. And so, learning to trust yourself has a lot to do from our vantage point with learning to see that emotions are fleeting. They're temporary. That's the one thing they all have in common, is that they always pass. And if we think about our life experience, our happy moments are really happy and they don't stay all the time. Neither do our worst moments. And instead, so they kind of move through, and we don't have to be scared of them. We don't have to try to numb them out. We also don't have to wallow in them. And we certainly don't have to feed the stories. That's what Ashley was talking about with stories, because chances are what's causing a lot of angst for men in the situation that you laid out at the beginning of the show, and for those hurdles that you're talking about, is they want to get from, how do I stop feeling this crappy? How do I stop feeling this uncertain? How do I start feeling more confident? All the good things. We want to go over there. Well, to get there, one has to acknowledge and recognize and experience that difficult feelings are a part of life. And we don't have to run from them. We can actually use them to our advantage. If we can name them, if we can feel them, and recognize that we can be okay when we're not okay, we can actually better connect with ourselves, our body, our mind, and make better decisions and get to trust ourselves, as Ashley was pointing out, because in difficult times or challenging times, we can learn ways to keep ourselves centered and grounded so that we can see better what our options are and how best to show up in a relationship. And if we think about, like a romantic relationship, wouldn't we all want to show up in such a way going, wow, she's really upset with me right now, or he's really upset with me right now. I'm really uncomfortable, and I know how to sit with this, and I can listen to myself, and I'm not going to overreact, and I don't have to tell myself a story about him or her, about myself. I could be right here. Wouldn't we all love that? And when our clients experience that for the first time, even if it's just for a second, it's changing. It's like they've just discovered for the first time what something sweet tastes like, or what something salty tastes like, when they've had no idea. Because in the end, we can describe all of these things. We can say, this is all the things you can do, and this is how it feels to be sitting with your feelings. That's like trying to explain to someone like what swimming in the ocean is like. Standing on the shore saying, when you swim, it's like this, and the water feels like this. And they're going, this is great. I appreciate the info. The only way they're going to know exactly what that is to go swim in the ocean.
Of course.
Right?
Of course.
So that's sort of what we're talking about.
Right.
It's connecting to that. So those two hurdles together, I think, are the same one. Sitting with discomfort, learning to trust yourself, and the ability to connect with that is where the agency piece comes in, where the growth comes in.
Nice.
There's something that when I talk with my clients that I try and frame it this way, and I've had very good success. So for everybody out there,
I know where
give
you're
it
going.
a shot.
I love this.
Well, because like in life, like he was saying, emotions are fleeting, right? And they come and go, but there are certain ones that we really enjoy experiencing, right? Like happiness, joy, sometimes anger actually feels really good to expel and express and feel, right? And so I tell my clients, like, imagine that you have a house and you have a knock on the door and there's little children there on the porch and it's very stormy outside. It's little children, or if you don't like kids, it's puppies, or, something so cute and innocent that needs help.
Like you love.
Yeah, they need something. Knock on the door and you let happiness in. You're like, oh, I love happiness. Come on in. Come out from the storm. Joy's there. Excitement, fun. You're like, yeah, everyone come on in. And then grief shows up or sadness. And you're like,
Loneliness.
Yeah, I don't really like you. Are
Fear.
you really going to leave them outside? Yeah. Are you going to leave those ones outside? No. You're still going to bring them in because they're little children or little puppies and they still need your attention. Now, that doesn't mean that they have to sit and spend the night in your house. You can just let them sit on the couch until the storm passes and then they will go on their way. But a lot of times people, if you reframe the uncomfortable things that they're feeling and know that you can still welcome it in, and having it in you is not going to destroy you. It's not going to make you so paralyzed that you can't function because it will pass. But in the experiencing of it sitting there and then passing, you're healing.
And that is actually the pathway. It's not minimizing that. It's not intellectualizing your way around that. It's actually through that. It's actually feeling that. And it's actually learning to trust that you can do that without falling off the deep end that we're all worried about, right? When we feel negative, difficult emotions, we're all worried we're never going to come back. I'm going to break in half. I'm going to die. No.
Yeah.
No. Chances are no. It's
Yeah.
not going to happen.
Like the book, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Oh, yeah.
The Power of Now is a great
Yes.
read, especially to kind of get an idea of what you're talking about. If you want to sit back and, don't have access to either of you, I think it's a great book to start.
It is. And it's, Tolle is very, he's very matter of fact and very compassionate and very focused on, and it's a different exercise. For me, when I read it, I had a similar reaction to you. I was like, wow, this is not even a conceptual framework I'd ever thought about before. Right. And I was fortunate enough that I was doing coaching at the time with a certified human potential coach. So it really resonated.
Right.
And she didn't even recommend it. I found it from a recommendation from a friend of mine.
Yeah, me too.
And that is really good because in the end, as important as it can be to know about our past, therapists help us with that. That's an area we don't dig into because we're not therapists.
Right.
As important as it is to know that, to kind of know ourselves, as important as it is to set our goals for the future and knowing where we want to go, healing and moving forward happens right here, right now. Healing is not done in the past. Healing is done right here. And I'm not the only person to say that. So I think Tolle has said that.
Yeah. It's an immersion. It's just sitting in it and accepting it and taking accountability for it. And I think the house analogy is fantastic, where you're going to welcome all these great things in your world, but you're not welcoming, fear or frustration or any of these things. I would always I go to the why. Why am I not doing that? That's just me trying to analyze the whole thing. But immersing yourself in that feeling and just okay, I'm in it. I'm here and now. I'm doing the breathing exercises, I'm doing the eye exercises, doing the hair exercises, the whole bit. And then, wow, I'm still alive afterwards. This is pretty impressive.
Because every feeling we're getting is coming through. It's funny, we think about them all the time, but our emotions and our feelings actually come from other sources, right? When we're walking somewhere at night and we get that sense that something going over there is a bad idea, our brain is telling us that, but it's taking in input from the body, right? There's a sensibility about it. And so our feelings are all telling us something. They're taking input in, not just through the eyes, not just through the nose, not just through the ears, all the things we normally talk about, but through the body itself. And then they're all interpreting that all together. And so our fear or our grief, even if we can identify, this is what I'm sad about, this is what I'm afraid about, if we can pause and be curious about the possibility of what this might be teaching us, and we learn, and we coach on this, ways to kind of, okay, whoa, this is happening. I'm feeling this and I'd like to stay with it. Here's some things I can do to calm myself down, to stay grounded. Then asking, what can this tell me? What can I learn from this? What can I do? And then to experience oneself going through it, not blocking it off, not doubting it, not slamming the door, not even holding on and white knuckling through it, but actually letting it move goes a long way. And men in particular have a really hard time with this because we are not taught and we are actually conditioned from a very young age to go the opposite direction. Be strong, be stoic, even though we don't mean it the way we say it, and don't show emotion, be the fixer, right? And be strong above all things. And then the message is strong means being immune to any difficult feeling.
Right.
And we celebrate that as tough.
Yeah, because that's possible. That's always possible, 100%, right?
Right.
We can always be immune to all this kind of stuff. But yeah, I think at a young age, all of those lessons, good or bad, that's what we're used to growing up.
Yep.
And then we get comfortable with that, and we don't, to move on from something like that where it's detrimental to your output, it's we don't know any better. And that was one of my major struggles, is going, but this is what I was taught. This is what I know. This is ingrained in me. This is what I had to do to survive as a little kid.
Does that resonate with you, Ashley, based on your working with clients, the men in your life? Did what we were just talking about, does that resonate to you as true?
Yeah. And I mean, to be honest, I feel utterly awful for you guys because I can't imagine being raised and taught like you're not allowed to express. You just have to like safeguard all of that and just hope that it just turns to ash and blows away. Because when when your life goes up in flames, you should address it. You shouldn't just ignore it.
Right.
But even like now, as adults, when you guys go through hardships, it's like, does the same lessons as a child still apply? How can they? Right. Because as children, you're not as cognitively aware and evolved and matured as you are as a grown man. So now you have all these ideas of like, well, these are other possibilities, these are other scenarios, and I don't know how to be a strong person and ignore everything in that kind of environment.
Well, and you've seen it in your own life, right? I mean, have you seen the men in your life struggle with this?
Mm-hmm.
You've seen that.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's detrimental, right?
Yeah.
It's detrimental.
Yeah.
It's just like having a wall up.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And
Right.
Of course.
I've seen some who recognize and are willing to be courageous enough to tear down the wall and see what's on the other side of it.
Mm-hmm.
Understanding that it's fearful to know what they might find on the other side and what they're going to experience. And I have also seen them who are like, I'm going to keep the wall up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm fine being in isolation, and I'm just going to keep pressing on, even though it's literally destroying them.
Yeah, it comes down to that choice. If they want to do something about it or not. If they're comfortable and they don't see any detriment to it, okay.
Yeah. Well, and I will say we usually don't get clients that aren't willing to go after it.
Why would they reach out
Right.
to you?
Why would they don't come to us?
Yeah,
Right.
they're like,
So-
I'm fine. Your life is a disaster. Oh, that's good.
Right. Well, it's actually one reason why we do our show and why a show like this one is so important is because this is the area where people can hear, whoa, wait, there's another way?
There are alternatives.
There's another way for me to think about this, to act on this. So if that's why we do it, because being a coach, your clients are kind of self-selecting. Like they come to you because they've heard that you do this or somebody else has given them a word of mouth, endorsement. But a lot of men, I know this was the case for me, and it sounds like it was the case for you, Glenn, is that I didn't even know there was even a problem. It was, is this what life is? I'm miserable. Like my relationships don't work. I keep blowing them up. I keep undercutting them. I keep blocking myself off, even though I don't want to. I didn't even know there was another way of this. I mean, I can really empathize with what you were saying at the top of the show, feeling just shredded, and lost. And my best thinking brought me here. And I even felt that way actually having done a lot of therapy. I did recovery work. Addiction is in my life. And I'd done all these things and I still found myself emotionally getting wrapped around the axle around relationship stuff. And that took this kind of coaching for me to kind of get to go, whoa, wait a minute, there's another way to do this. And it never occurred to me that I could learn to trust what was already hardwired into my central nervous system and into my emotional state, that could take me where I had always wanted to go. And that was liberating.
Yes. The level of uncomfortableness, I don't know, I can't think of a better word, but just being uncomfortable with, oh my gosh, I'm thinking or considering going out of my comfort zone. This is what I am so comfortable. Even though it's unhealthy, people tell me I'm not doing well, I'm seeing outcomes that are just very poor, but it's comfortable. And you two are providing this suggestion that it could be different. That's so uncomfortable.
And it's all in you. That's the thing. Because then we got to show up for it.
Right. Take accountability.
We got to show up for it.
And do some action. And this is what I do. It's like when I'm sitting around for I got to go to the gym. I should go to the gym. Well, I don't. And doing that whole process, half hour later, I'm like, forget about it. I'm going to watch some YouTube videos and just sit here and eat my Cheetos. I'm good. I don't need to go lift. Rather than just going, I scheduled my lift. It's on my calendar. Got to go.
Yeah.
Holding yourself accountable. And I think that's what you were talking about the other day is you've made yourself accountable for spin class.
Oh, yeah. 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 I made that non-negotiable.
And it's just a little thing. It's kind of like making your bed every morning. It's just brushing your teeth, especially prior to a date. Brush your teeth, guys.
Yeah.
Please.
just please. As she says,
Right. Well, and for Ashley, that's like jujitsu for you. Right?
Yeah.
Literally. No. It's like, that's her non-negotiable.
Yeah.
That's like her thing.
Kickboxing.
That and kickboxing. That's what she does.
Yeah.
And we actually talk about that quite a bit because those things are important. Like that example you said of kind of putting off something you should do or you want to do, but then for whatever reason you end up not doing it and you're eating Cheetos.
Right.
That's a marker by itself on some level. Like if you're in a relationship and someone sees that, I'm going to go to the gym. Okay. You plan to go to the gym, then you don't go to the gym. I thought you were going to the gym, honey. Yeah, I just decided not to do that. I'm going to sit and eat Cheetos. Now, your partner might just go, okay, whatever. But it does give out a signal about what choice you actually made.
Yeah.
The easier choice was made in that moment. Right?
Oh, yes.
And rather than the difficult one. And in relationships, for them to be healthy, we got to have two healthy people taking care of their own stuff.
Right.
Because healthy finds healthy. Unhealthy finds unhealthy. Right? The old adage from Taoism is water seeks its own level and finds it.
Right.
So if you want to level up, right, you got to level that up first. And that other person then can level with you if you're in connection with them, because they'll see like, okay, I can do that. You might find a way to go together to the gym. But it's not going to work. And that's a signal, whether we like it or not. So it's not just about how do I communicate with my partner. No, we've been talking since the very beginning, even though this is about relationships, about the guy in this case, the guy themselves. That's the signal. And if you're not going to take the steps to take care of yourself, are you ready to do the difficult work in the relationship?
Right.
Maybe not.
Right.
And I will say from like a woman's perspective, a man that says he's going to do something and then follows through is wildly attractive, because a lot of people don't keep their word anymore. So if they're, if like woman looking to a man and he's like, no, I'm going to go to the gym, and then he goes. And even though I'm like, wow, he's had a really stressful day, he's got a lot on his plate. And I would understand if he's like, I'm just so burnt out, like it's not going to happen tonight. But he's still
that's
gonna
honest.
keep that. Yes.
Because that'd be honest.
The biggest suggestion I would give to guys out there, and this is what I had to do too, is if you're just getting out of a relationship, and let me know if this is, wrong advice or something, but my suggestion is, and just because it worked for me, is if you just got out of a relationship, don't pursue another relationship right away. Don't just be like, okay, all right, my 20-year relationship just ended, and I think I'll go out for a walk now. It's been a month. It's been a good month since that papers were filed, and I'm good to go. Let me go out for a walk, and if I see someone, I'm going to say hi and introduce myself and see if I can get a date. I would be, that's, if you want to do that, cool. But what are your current boundaries that you're working with? What are you doing to hold yourself accountable for your own actions? Because this other person, you're going to start laying stuff on her.
Well, do you even know who you are?
Yes.
Right.
That was what I was going to say.
And
You've spent years, like your whole life was woven in with somebody else's life. And, if it was 20 years, 10 years, a year, you still have to extract yourself out of that. And then there's a lot of pieces of you that you're like, I don't know who this is because they left with the other person.
Right.
And how much of this is really me and how much of this was compromised for the other person.
It's that when that third disintegrates, you've had two people who have changed over the course of that relationship. So the person you were coming in before you met, you might have known yourself maybe, but you're definitely going to have to relearn who you are coming out on the way out. Because, and if you cannot be in a good relationship with yourself, and that means knowing all the emotional states, being able to experience that, knowing what works, knowing your boundaries, knowing your expectations, knowing your standards. If you don't know any of that, you're not going to be able to bring it into a relationship. You can't manufacture it on the fly in a relationship.
Shouldn't depend on somebody else.
No, because that's actually putting a time bomb into the relationship. It's just going to keep tick, 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 tick. And you spend all this time trying to avoid it or work around it or hope it goes away. And eventually, and it could be something like sitting and eating Cheetos when you said you're going to go to the gym. If that's the 378th time that's happened and your partner's seen that, that might be the moment where it's like, you know what? You don't follow through on what you're going to say you're going to do. I'm sick of this.
I go to the gym, but I just don't feel like it today. And like, well, it's been 365 days of that, man. What do you think you're doing?
Right.
Really?
Well, and
you never know.
When somebody sees something like that, they're like, well, where else are they going to do that?
Right.
Is this going to bleed into all other areas of the life,
Yeah, it's all an inside job.
And that's actually what you said is a really important point for those guys that are just recovering, is to be like, well, what are you doing to make yourself attractive? And for even those guys that might be in a long-term relationship, they're just coasting along, and then they're the ones eating the Cheetos, but they're also, I take care of the kids, I got a full-time job, I'm making the meals at night, and I'm, she's just losing interest. She kind of says these comments to me that are not flattering. I'm getting insulted. What's wrong? And I'm too blunt, and you guys are going to be better than this than I am, but I'd be like, dude, you're not attractive anymore, man. You've lost the attraction. You've lost the appeal that she saw in you when you first met. What
I don't
can you
think
do?
that's such a bad thing per se.
No.
I think it's really good because sometimes people get slapped in the face with the reality. Like sometimes they do.
And guy friends can do that for each other, or at least ideally they should be able to.
That's what I was alluding to. Not alluding to, but I was thinking of earlier. Both of you were talking about trusting yourself. And for guys, it's it's difficult to start developing trust with new people, especially as an older guy. Developing trust with new people or friends, people you've just met, it's really difficult. And to open up, I've personally come from a space of, well, I've opened up before and it's blown up in my face. It was disastrous. So I don't want to open up again. So I got to a point of where it's like, well, can I trust this person? But then it's like, do I trust myself? And how do you get to that point of where you can trust yourself and then trust the person you're with? What cues are you doing for yourself? If you trust yourself, though, you won't worry so much about being vulnerable. You won't worry so much about how's it going to feel if I'm open up to this person. If you trust yourself and you make the decision to share something and it doesn't go the way you thought, when you trust yourself and know yourself, it still might not feel great, but you'll be able to recognize what was yours in that. Maybe you overshared something, maybe you shared something a little too soon, or quote unquote, whatever. But you also know where their stuff is. And you can see that, go, okay, they didn't, that just didn't work. You won't worry about that as much. It's when we're in the spot where we're not trusting ourselves that we're hoping that by being vulnerable with somebody else, they'll respond well and then we can feel okay. And then that's giving them an enormous amount of power over our emotional state. And any relationship we're going to be in, whether it's a new one or whether it's a friendship or whether it's a romantic one, you don't want to be in a position where the way you're wired or the way you live your life is you wake up every single day and the attitude of the person lying next to you in bed or the people you meet at work are going to determine the type of day you're going to have. You want to be able to determine that to whatever degree you can for yourself and then respond to whatever comes your way, however your partner is the next in the morning or however your coworkers are. You respond. The former that I was just describing, you're reactive all the time. Oh, I'm feeling pretty good today. Oh, but my partner is really upset with me. That means I'm about to have a bad day. That's giving away an enormous amount of power. And so it keeps coming back to the same thing. We have to do our own work. All these questions start with ourselves. And we have to get those sorted out on some level before we can expect our relationships to get better and not keep repeating the same patterns over and over again. That can take some time. And even being vulnerable early on in a relationship, like how do women in general, would you think? Let me just
speak for all women, actually.
How many dates? Yeah, we want you to speak for all women here. But in general, with your clients, or even your personal experiences, when they open up to you and be vulnerable to you, is there a time frame that you see? Like, I'm really close to this man, and he's saying, this is what I struggle with. Or is it like day two or date two?
It is not date two. I will
Usually
say that.
not.
Usually not.
Usually not.
Usually not.
Yeah.
And there is something to be said about a man that is very honest with himself, has done, some work. He's spent some time addressing his own stuff and he's owned it and he's working on it because he is not afraid to look at himself in the mirror and see what he sees. Women will pick up on that naturally.
Yes.
Because you are automatically more, what is the word?
Authentic?
I am able to connect
authentic.
with you because you are so authentically you. You radiate like a lighthouse, and I am drawn to that. That alone doesn't mean you have to spill all of your guts right off the bat, because I will pick up on it. I was like, wow, he's really intuitive with his own self. I would say as a relationship, if you're dating or, you're new in a relationship or what, you feel it out because the women also are going to hold a lot of stuff. I think especially nowadays where we don't share a lot because we don't trust that the person's going to be there next week. They're going to get what they want and they're going to just hijack it out of there. Right. I mean, I think it does.
Hijack it
right out of there, buddy.
Ideally, but
that actually works in this context. It does.
Yeah.
That term.
And we're not talking about and just a side disclaimer is we're addressing guys that have a sense of integrity. We're not talking to guys that are just full of,
Again, they aren't listening.
Yeah, they're not.
Okay, not yet.
All right.
They are not.
Or if they are, it's by accident.
So all you gentlemen out there with a sense of integrity, you don't lie,
or a
cheat,
partner
steal.
said, you need to listen to this.
I was going to say, if somebody sent this to you,
listen.
It might be a good indicator.
Yes.
A soft, gentle, support.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're fine. But it varies from person to person. But I would say spend some time getting to know them before just expelling all of your stuff. So maybe you're a few months in and you're like, hey, we've had a couple of moments that felt really intimate and close, and I shared a detail, something that's a little vulnerable. Hey, this is just something I struggle with. And that's okay. And it doesn't have to be all this stuff. And share one and see what happens.
Yeah.
And if she's like, I totally get that. I resonate with that. Yeah. What are you doing?
Sorry. I thought you were done. Sorry. Well, I want to jump on it because the important thing here too is some of the questions that we're talking about, we have a timetable in our head. How soon do I share this? My answer to that sometimes is you share it when you're in a connection point where you feel you can and she's receptive and you're open. That might be later down the line. But we put this idea in our head of at a certain point we have to be here. A certain point it needs to be here. After this many dates, this is okay. Like this is somehow this formula, this equation we have to figure out and get all the steps right, like we're doing calculus, right? 35 different parts of this problem, and I got to get them all right and right on time. Otherwise, this isn't going to work.
Well, we are in Seattle. There's a lot of nerds out there using Excel and writing everything down right now.
But every relationship is its own dynamic, it's its own dance. It goes at its own speed. And so for me, I don't worry about that so much in my own personal life. I don't worry about that so much with my dating life, with my friends, with any of those things. I am far more interested in how well I am showing up as myself, knowing myself in a given situation, being present in that situation, and letting the connections that I have with people, whether there's a romantic element, whether there's not, grow as they are growing right in front of me, and love that moment and appreciate that moment. And the rest takes care of itself. If we get into this point where I got to be in this relationship in order to be happy, once again, that's another time bomb that you're putting in there. We have to be open to the idea that in the present is the only place we can be in any relationship that we're in. And we have no idea where it's going to go. We have no idea what it's going to look like. We have no idea if it's going to succeed or fail. Even if we get married to the person, there's no guarantee we're going to be married to that person in a year.
Right.
We can say we're committed to it. We can do all those things, but there's no guarantee. So how do you show up now?
Right. And a couple things are entering my mind as you're talking about this. Is one, it all goes back to trusting yourself and being comfortable in the now and understanding your weaknesses, your limitations,
your vulnerabilities.
Yes. And then understanding that and going forward, and then maybe pursuing a relationship. But spend some time knowing yourself, knowing your boundaries, what you're good at and what you're not at.
And let it show up.
Yeah.
This is the thing. This is the other thing that we talk about quite a bit. When we do these things for ourselves, we draw in the people, the types of relationships we want, the experiences we want, because we're filtering things out in a different way. Things that used to be important to us or we thought needed to be important cease to be, and we start bringing in the things that we actually want and the types of relationships we actually want to build. That will happen because in connection with oneself, one puts out what you talked about, that energy, right? Ashley, you said that energy that comes out. That gets picked up and that draws in the people, again, water seeking its own level. That draws in the type of people and the type of experiences and the type of connection that we want to have. And so for me to have successful relationships in the future, I needed to stop worrying about finding one in the now.
I have something to add to that if you're done.
I am. I feel really strongly about that. So it took me a while to play that out.
Point. It was
Thank
a
you.
good point. The only thing I would, because I have seen this with people before, is don't use vulnerability as bait, because I have seen this a lot.
Great point.
Also, where men are like, if I wave my vulnerability flag and I talk about that I have these terrible things that happened to me and I have all this trauma, and they like use it to entice people to come in and fix them, that is never a good, healthy start. So do not just wave your flag and use it to draw in people. That's not what I mean by being like honest. And, when you're connecting with somebody, like JD was saying, just nurture the relationship. Because if you were to get in a relationship with somebody and it was a year, 2 years down the road, and you guys were really close and really intimate, you started sharing some really great things, you've built a foundation that can hold those moments. If it is date 3 and you let all that out, it's just going to fall through the floor. There's no foundation for it to rest on.
That's a great sign of, hey, I want you to be my therapist. So I'm going to dump everything out on you because this is our second date and I need someone to take care of me rather than taking care of your own crap. So I would say this is a message to both men and women. Like, don't dump everything out on your date within just a few hours.
But also, if you're going to like talk about something really personal, ask, hey, I've got something I'm struggling with. Is it all right if we talk about it?
Yeah.
Because we all know that person that will call us, friends, family, whatever. And you're like, hey, what's going on? And they just word vomit all this stuff. And you're like, I was not prepared. Or I've had a really stressful day. I'm not in a mental headspace where I can even handle everything.
We're about to walk into the movies.
Yeah, you just threw at me, right? Like, have that level of respect for the person that you're reaching out to, whether it's somebody new or somebody you've known for a long time.
Right.
Is it all right? Can I take 5 minutes of your time? Or when would be a great time in your busy schedule where we can talk? So I really have something heavy on my heart that I need to talk about.
Right.
And over time, of course, if you do that, you develop the types of relationships where the person is ready to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
And you're also able to say that, even if it's just something over text, and Ashley and I have this dynamic between the two of us in our relationship, our friendship. She can tell when something's weighing on me and vice versa.
Right.
And we both know each other's cues. And sometimes it can just be, hey, are you doing okay? I'm picking up on something. Texting back, you know what? I'm grinding. I'm feeling this, and this, and I'm unsure, I'm tired, and I'm not sure where it's going to go. However, that's where I'm at. I'm not asking to have it fixed. I'm not asking her to give me some great advice. She responds back with, oh, I know how that feels.
Right.
Is there anything I can do? You just listening, right? You just letting me verbalize this. Or we talk on the phone for a few minutes. And it goes the other direction too. There are times where I've picked up on something from her and I've said to her, are you all right? And she goes, until you asked that, I wasn't even aware that I was grinding on that. But yeah, this is what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't have experiences at all where the other person feels like they've just been ambushed, right, in our communication, right? And that benefits me in all my relationships because this is such a nice template for how I want my relationships to be. I know it helps Ashley in her relationships. Right. And that's the nice thing about this is it going this route, doing this type of work, it spreads out to all relationships and affects them. Whereas before, all the things we were doing that weren't so healthy were infecting them. And that's what's great about this kind of work when you start to see it. And then it builds that momentum and you feel that much better. Right. So what I would encourage men listening to this is, look, if this sounds like a big uphill climb, it can feel that way only at first. But then our experience with clients that really invest in this is they are amazed at how quickly, seemingly, they start building some positive momentum because they're tapping into how they're naturally wired. Mm-hmm. And that's exciting for us as coaches. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
All that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So you actually start seeing a shift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like whoa, dude. Or
yeah.
I didn't speak for you there, did I?
No, that was great.
Okay. I thought I was on firm ground there. I kept looking at you to make sure I was.
I was going to say, I mean, we've gotten so close in knowing each other to the point that, especially JD, he's very intuitive and like whatever's going on with me. Like he said, I'll be having a day and not even realizing because I'm so deep in it. And he'll message and like feeling like something's off, just checking in. How are you? And I might read it and be like, wow, he's right. But I'm like so busy and focused. I'm like, I don't have time to even address this. Like, love that you're checking in. But like, if I break focus, like this is going to be a problem. Mm-hmm. And he'll text back later and be like, just send up a rocket emoji. Let me know you're alive and okay. And like, just.
That's our thing. A rocket emoji.
And if I just send that tells him like, she's alive, she's okay. She's just totally buried. And you
had to ask me that not too long ago for the first time. Like you had to do the same thing. You had to reach back and go,
I did.
Hey, send up a rocket. I was like, oh, yep, I got to send up a rocket ship. I'm okay. We'll connect.
Yeah. See, the communication between you two is really impressive. I mean, you guys are a great example of what good communication in a relationship would be like. Mm-hmm. And your little, throwing that out there, send up a rocket emoji just so I know your life shows you care, and that by you sending it, hey, I hear what you're saying. Mm-hmm. I'm still here. You remind me of, are you familiar with James Sexton?
Yeah.
He's the divorce lawyer, has the book out. You know, if you're in my office, it's already too late. One of the things he advises to stay in a relationship, just a little thing, but just put up a Post-it. Little yellow Post-it, thinking of you. Hope you have a great day. Whatever, just something. So just the little emoji to say, basically, let me know you're okay. Yes, I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of you, or whatever. Yeah, in a relationship, a deep relationship. I'm thinking of you. Let me know.
No, it's interesting because that works very well for Ashley and myself. And I have other relationships where that probably wouldn't work as well. And in some of those, and they tend to be with people who live at further distances, but I have a couple of friendships where easily can always check in like that. But I also know that I'm not necessarily going to hear back right away. Right? It might take some time because that's how they are. They're not on their phone a lot. They're doing their own stuff. They'll see it. They might get back to it. They might forget, whatever. I've had to learn with those relationships to say, this is how they are. I love them as they are. I accept that this is how this goes. And I trust, because I can trust myself, I trust that they're coming from a good place and they're going to reach out when they can reach out. And they always do. And rather than tell myself a million stories, why isn't this person right? Like, what did I do? What's wrong with them? Are they dead? Right? You know, or did I do something wrong?
Right.
Instead, I honor whatever struggle they're in, whatever they're going into, and whatever they're going through, that when they come back, they feel like I've honored that.
Right.
And I guess that Ashley could say the same thing.
You know, I would say you could even apply that to relationships.
Yes.
Because,
100%.
you know,
You mean like romantic ones?
Yes.
Yes.
When you're partnered or you're dating or however you want to word it, it's very common, you know, when you're like, okay, let me know when you get there. Okay, let me know when you're leaving. You know, check in with me. And some people, they want that consistent confirmation that their partner is alive and okay. I'm like, but you don't. Yeah, where's my pen?
No, it's like always coming back.
Keep your pen with you. Yes.
Yeah.
But you know,
no, but always that motion of like always having to check in.
Yes, I'm like, you don't do that with your best friends.
Right.
You don't text your friend every hour and be like, "Are you still alive? You haven't texted me back yet." You know, and it's just honoring and respecting the fact that they are your partner, your husband, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, but they also have a life that they are busy with. And it is okay if they don't get back to you right away. Maybe they're at work and they're right in the middle of something, or their lunch break got shortened and so they don't really have time to like text you all the updates or whatever. They're probably fine.
Yeah, don't tell yourself a story.
I was going to say, because that comes back to you who is anxiously wanting to have something confirmed and calm down. And I would encourage people to look, both men and women, look inside, be like, why do you need that constant confirmation? Is it because you don't trust them? First of all, they can text you while in the middle of doing something you wouldn't appreciate, and you won't know because it's just a text, right? At the same time, and if you can't trust them, why are you with them? But also, like, why are you so anxious about that? There's a story inside you that
probably you don't trust yourself.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That kind of reminds me of how in relationships, it's one of, I want you to adhere to my fears. And I'm guilty of this, where I'm like, you're not, kind of like your example, you're not responding to me right away, or I'm just here to solve your problems. I'm not here to listen to anything. I see the nail in your forehead. I can remove that right now. What's the problem? Right? Let me get it, you know. But it's one of, I think, detrimental to be, these are my expectations and I want you to adhere to them. It's really bad thinking. And I'm not saying I'm exclusive of this. I've done this and I've noticed that it's really detrimental.
So have I.
That's something that JD and I talk about a lot, is those unspoken agreements.
Yes, unspoken.
Where I might think in a relationship like, you know, I kiss you goodbye in the morning. I don't need to hear from you all day. You come home at night. You tell me about your day. Like, that's great. And you might be like, I need to hear from you for every hour. That's normal. That's the standard. And if we don't talk about the fact that I see this as an agreement this way and you see it from that perspective, if those are not discussed, it can cause a lot of chaos, because I'm going to feel smothered and you're going to feel really anxious. And that's just one small example of like when people get into relationships or are in them and they're like, oh, we've never actually talked about some of these things. There are obviously big things that should be agreed on, because people, they grow up and they were raised certain ways with different influences and morality and values and whatnot. And then they get into these relationships with somebody who was raised entirely different because they probably had a different set of parents and different circumstances. Right. And yet you're supposed to come together and it's just supposed to naturally mesh like a puzzle.
I was trying to look up the book. I can't remember what it's called, but it discusses exactly what you're going about. Is an anxious person versus a stable person. What is there? There's avoidant, anxious, and stable.
Attachments.
Yeah. Attachment.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. And just, I'm kind of cringing at the guy that's like, I need to know where you're at. And then you're like, I'm stable. I'm fine. I'm right here. It's okay, man.
Well, that's the thing is we are in an agreement. Every relationship we're in has agreements in it, whether they're spoken or unspoken. What Ashley and I talk about all the time is speaking those things is part of learning to trust yourself and being vulnerable and recognizing that something may not work. If you know who you are and you know what works for you and you know what you're what you want the agreements to be for the benefit of both of you, if those aren't going to be met, there's a chance the relationship is only going to go so far. That tends to be what we don't want to consider. We don't want to be vulnerable because we don't want to lose what we've already got, even though it may not be ideal. One person's feeling smothered, but doesn't realize that, well, part of this is because we're not having conversations about this, because then you have to confront the fact that maybe it won't work, or maybe the relationship is changing. Maybe the agreement has to be reevaluated and redesigned. Maybe it needs to be discarded altogether. And this is the thing. That's why I keep coming back to with my male clients. If you think perfecting yourself, improving yourself to get the best relationship possible so you don't have to worry about any of these things ever again, or that you won't ever be alone, that itself is a problem. Because if you're not okay on your own, whether you're in a relationship or not, you're never going to be okay enough in the relationship.
100%.
So that part has to be recognized. And I would say that's true for men and women, anybody in a relationship.
Well, even like you were saying at the very top of the show, men that are coasting in relationships. Yeah. More than likely it's coasting and going downhill because there was some unspoken agreements in the beginning when the relationship first formed that are no longer being honored, are no longer being actively pursued. Everyone's probably looking great when they first get in the relationship. And then,
who doesn't?
And it's not to say like, I'm only going to be with you if you look like this. So if you look like that, I'm leaving.
Right.
I mean, unless that's what you want to agree to and you say that out loud. But you can't have that in your mind and never say something. And then when the person has had a rough spot of life and they, haven't given themselves that much love and time and attention to take care of themselves. So you're like, well, that person over there is way more attractive. So I'm going to leave you and just pick up and go over to that person. That's so not fair to said person who you've made an agreement, a commitment to. It's like, why instead of just dumping and leaving and picking up with somebody new, work on what you have. Actively have a conversation with that person. And how can I support you? I see you're struggling. Is there anything we can do together to help? Is there anything I can do? Is there anything I can do to help inspire you? Is this just a period you need to go through and I'm going to be there when the season's done?
What I start liking to think is once you're out of a relationship, once a guy's out of a relationship or whatever, and they're discovering themselves and figuring out what is good for them, that, in my opinion, is a never-ending process. Don't ever stop doing that. Don't ever stop pursuing, what you want to do with yourself. Growth. I think, and I'm guilty of this. Once you get married, I'm done. I don't need to do anything else. I don't need to try anymore. We got the rings on the fingers. We're good to go. This is it, right?
That's that culmination. We're okay now.
And I think a lot of guys, and like I said, I'm guilty of this too. We're married. I'm good. I don't need to continue with trying to be attractive.
Oh, and they'll say things, and I've seen men do this, where they'll be like, well, I don't know what she means. I'm not there for her. I come home every single day. I'm there in the evening. So that's not what that means, right?
We watch TV together every night. My gosh.
You can be in the same room and be a million miles apart.
100%.
And you can be hundreds of miles apart, thousands of miles apart in a connected relationship, and it's connected. And there's a huge difference between them. And so, yeah, it's that culmination thing. We men, it's so funny. We're conditioned to hold all these emotions in and not acknowledge them. We're also conditioned to think that as soon as we reach that apex, quote unquote, of marriage, we've done what we needed to do. We show up. Okay, this is how we do. This is being a man. We turn it into something that it's not. And then we wonder why it feels so difficult. That's because it's not the problem isn't marriage itself necessarily. It isn't necessarily your partner. It's the expectations and the assumptions and the unspoken agreements you brought into this that you're not even aware you've got.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that time bomb. That's that thing that we're uncomfortable about. You're talking about those guys like, I don't know, I just have this unease and I don't know why. It's probably in there somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
It's for me, it was finding a purpose. And I think guys in general, once you find a purpose and start working on that, first of all, it's get plenty of sleep, drink plenty of water, go to the gym, eat right, all these kinds of things to start getting better, feeling better, getting your mind straight. And then what is my purpose? What is my why? And then pursuing that. Mm-hmm. But never stop pursuing it. Don't be like, okay, I've got the girl, I've got the job, I got the car, I got the house, I'm good. I got the couch now, this is great. It's just like, don't ever stop. And I think a lot of guys are stopping.
They do. And I think Ashley and I talk about ourselves, but then we talk about with clients too, the 6 pillars of what any person needs to be able to do exactly what you're talking about. And they're all associated with personal health. Mm-hmm. Good sleep, movement every day.
Yes.
Exercise, nutrition, stress management, and what's the last one? Community.
You were waiting to say that.
Yeah.
You weren't you?
I think he's got it.
Yeah, those 6 pillars. Where are you on all that? All those things together is a good way for any person to kind of get a good sense of where they're at.
Repeat those 6 again.
Sleep, nutrition, movement, exercise, self-regulation, emotional regulation, stress management, and community.
Nice.
Those things, if you take a look at all of those and you're working or moving, adjusting out of curiosity and commitment to do those things. So if that's a pillar that's important, movement, that might get you off the couch instead of the Cheetos and the YouTube. Right. Not you, but figurative you.
Yeah.
To move. This is a pillar in my life. I know that if I'm working and growing in these areas, I'm improving my life. I'm improving my ability to show up well for myself, to develop trust for myself, to show up better for relationships, whether I'm in one or I hope to be in one. Doing those things is a nice benchmark. And when you do those things, you're going to do things like make your bed. Right. Make sure that you're, brushing your teeth. You're making healthy choices for food. Those kinds of things. And it's so funny when we talk with clients about this, they're like, it's not what I kind of expected this was going to start with. Well, yeah, these are the building blocks.
Like, wait a minute, I got to take action? What?
Right.
What?
Right.
What are you talking about?
And Ashley, we've talked about this before too. Like from a woman's perspective, meets a guy who does that, who's getting his sleep, who's making quality choices with his time and his food and things like that. That's noticeable.
Oh, it is. Because I don't know why.
It is for women too.
Well, right. Women like, too, I mean, men are going to find women more attractive that take care of themselves. And by taking care of ourselves, we're confident. Everyone knows confidence is
healthy
sexy.
men will.
It's attractive.
Healthier men will.
Yes.
Will find that attractive.
Yes.
Other unhealthy men will find that threatening.
This is true.
Or she's too independent.
Yeah, I like that. She's too strong.
Too strong. Yeah.
Too strong.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. But there is something innately attractive about the fact that if a man follows those fundamental things, because it shows that he does prioritize his health for his longevity, and he honors his commitments and he keeps his own agreements. And those are really good foundational, because I mean, if you go like way back into the history of our DNA, like we are trying to find someone that we feel safe with, that's going to provide and protect. And that is not just a, strong person out there that has money. Like maybe way back in the day.
Machismo.
Yeah, right.
Some edge to it.
Yeah, right.
I like to say, ladies are looking for James Bond that can do the diapers. Be an assassin, but also be able to come in, change the diapers, and tell me how am I feeling.
And cook.
And cook. Sure. Yeah. So someone. So there's got to have an edge, but you got to have a purpose as well.
Right. Well, and most of the time, men who are connected are going to be willing to do the diapers. Those who are not are like, it's a woman's job. I gave you the house and I provide you money to go get the groceries and you're supposed to take care of everything inside. Now, I think that's fine because that was our initial, like we take care of everything at the home. He provided the home, I take care of it. Whatever you give me, I'm going to grow and multiply it.
That was the agreement. Yeah.
That's usually what they come to be. Now, like modern day, the agreement might be like, you do the laundry, I do the dishes, we take turns cooking or whatever. And that's fine.
And we both need to have jobs to be able to live the life that we want. So that requires that give and take. Yeah.
But I mean, you have those agreements, but it does come back down to like, if you're following those fundamental things that JD was saying, is guy or girl, that's going to already tell me that you are so much more elevated in the common society than most of the people we've run into.
Like you've already leveled up.
Yeah, that's
on your
leveling up.
own.
I mean, somebody, and it's just, you walk into a room, somebody who is well-dressed, you notice them right away. You don't notice the people in the hoodies and the sweats. You notice the person who stands out because they give a damn about what they look like.
There's a purpose to what they're doing.
Yes, they
It was intentional. Yeah.
Care about themselves enough
They
that
have
they're
a sense of their why. Right?
100%.
As you were talking about.
Yeah.
And I think that's all of that is very true, because I think that we do want to know in our relationships, whether they're romantic, friendship, we want to know what the other person can provide, right? Nourishment for the relationship, however that's defined.
Sure.
And yet we also don't want to feel like we're the ones who'd have to compensate for whatever lack they've got. Right? We don't want to do that. Where we want that person to be able to some degree take care of themselves, and then together in that third, figure out what you have to work on together, what you have to help provide for the other. Wow. And if we do that without verbalizing what those agreements are, it's wandering around in the dark.
Right.
Hoping that you can find one another. And if we use the analogy of a relationship being a dance, you don't want to dance without any lights on. You don't want to dance without an awareness of what's in the living room. You don't want to fall over the couch. You don't want to run into the door frame. You don't want to step on each other's toes. You're already going to do that anyway as you're learning to dance. Do it in the light.
Yeah. I've seen clips out there where the wife is saying, he hasn't taken the garbage out for 5 days. And she's not going to do it, and she's waiting for him to do it, and he doesn't do it. And then he finally does it, and she's like, about time, just that kind of thing. And it's almost like, well, his ESPN was turned off. It didn't resonate. He flipped it off at some point. It's like, what you're saying here is communication, and it goes both ways. That's just the clip I saw. But it's how you both have said, you got to verbalize your agreement or expectations at the very beginning. Like, this is what I'm good at, or this is how I am, or, I'm trying to get a sense of like, what would you relay at the very start of it? Like, yeah, I like this, and yeah, I'm kind of like that, and this is where I struggle. And,
Well, consider. Oh.
No, go.
Oh,
Consider.
Go. No, you go. No, you go.
When you're going to say something to your partner, consider talking to them the way that you would appreciate being spoken to. For example, taking the garbage out, you don't want to be like, well, it's about time you did.
Right.
Because is he going to want to take the garbage out again? Probably not. If that was his response, instead of like, really appreciate you took the garbage out today. Thank you so much. You took that off my plate. That's how I would prefer someone to say it to me, instead of when I finally got to doing something and then they just shot me down for
instead
it.
Of a jab.
Yeah.
Oh, I know you were busy, probably distracted with blah, blah, blah.
Well, and think of what a distraction and reaction that is, because I keep thinking of what Esther Perel would say about this, right? Fights about the dishes are very rarely about the dishes. Fights about taking out the garbage are very rarely about taking out the garbage. It's about the expectation or the assumption or the unspoken agreement that's being violated by that person not doing that, and the fears that brings up. About the garbage is he's not attentive. And if he's not attentive to the garbage, which is something that is so small, how is he going to be attentive to the things that are actually big? Like that I'm struggling at work right now and I'm not sure I want to stay in this job, but I'm not sure how I can walk away and still be able to help provide for the family. If he's not even going to give a crap about the garbage for 5 days,
right?
How's he going to give crap about something that's actually important? Now, he may have no idea that that's where she's at. And maybe, to be charitable to the guy, if he did, he would go, oh man, okay, that's true. So let's actually talk about that. I will take the garbage out, and I'm going to work on being better at that, because I recognize that there's a message in there that you're getting.
You remind me of this James Sexton interview. Not to bring up James again, but
Smart guy.
It was one of those situations where obviously I think he was representing the wife in this situation, and she relayed to him like. He did the shopping, and he would always pick up some type of crackers or something, some dessert cracker that she loved. It was just like her thing. And they were married for, I'm guessing, I'm just paraphrasing all of this, for a few years or whatnot, and that stopped. it just stopped happening. And she was like, something's very wrong. I think he's cheating. I think he's going out somewhere else. And I think that happened to be true. Don't quote me on it, and don't splice
Get the
it.
book and read it.
Yeah.
See the interview, get the book. Yeah, but it was something so subtle like that, kind of what you were saying, where it may be a passive aggressive move, maybe just something to where it's like, I'm done caring.
Right.
Or
an oversight.
Yeah.
Or just forgot.
But yeah, maybe it was just a forget thing.
But you don't know.
It turned out to be, she was legit. She was right. She was right. He was just, I guess.
Man, and how do you know if it's a tell that something's wrong or a story? You have to go back to communication. You have to eventually go right at that and go, what is that about? Because you stopped doing that. Yeah. And my fear is you're having an affair.
Yep.
Because at least then you find out.
It is kind of interesting how women are very spot on with that.
They tend to be intuitive. Yeah.
They tend to be.
Because we pay attention to habits and consistency.
I would say the same thing as for guys. Or it might be, well, there's ways to be intuitive, and then there's ways to be like, I'm going to ignore every red flag out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
everyone loves a good carnival.
Yeah. And everybody else is going, really? Everybody loves a good carnival. Everybody loves a good parade.
Right.
Yeah.
Not when the rides break down and people fall off. Though.
This is like the greatest.
You find that out too late.
This is the greatest train wreck ever. This is fantastic. But yeah, everyone else could see all these red flags, and the person could be oblivious to it, or it could just be something super subtle, and something's going on. Or it's like, you know what? They're vacationing down in Dubai all the time. I don't know what's going on, but they're getting some freaking flyer miles. That's great.
Yeah. I mean, to go back to your example about taking out the trash and whatnot, he spent 5 days not doing it, because there is the other side to that coin where, maybe the wife brought it up, was like, hey, it'd be great if you could take this out and help me out with this. And he deliberately is like, yeah, I'll get to it whenever. And he's not prioritizing or valuing the fact that she has spoken up and said, like, hey, this would really help me out. And I don't mean like nagging like a dripping faucet where like, take the garbage out every day, just if she's coming at it with kindness and grace of like, hey, here's an opportunity where you could be a total win. You could be a total knight in shining armor by taking out the garbage. Easy to do, huge impact. Here's an example. There are some men that will be like, it's not worth it. So then my question is, one, why is it not worth it to them to help her out so much? And two, for her to recognize if it's not worth it, this is the time, and this can go both ways, but this is the time to reassess your healthy boundaries of, do I want to stay in something like this where that person has made it apparent, even if we've talked about it and they've deliberately said, like, this is not important to me, you're not important to me. Do you need to stick around in that anymore?
Could be he's being passive aggressive. Maybe something's going on with him to where it's like, I'm just done with this. And I'm going to do something to piss her off.
Yep. And it's, again, there's an agreement in there somewhere that has shifted.
It broken.
And there can be fear on both sides of addressing that, hoping that it'll just change. And that's where the justifications can come in. Right. And it's easy to do. Like, well, maybe they're just having a bad day, or maybe we're in a tough spot. But you know what? We're married, so we're going to see this all the way through. All those things, rather than just, if you're stepping on each other's toes and you're dancing, stop dancing for a second. Talk about what's happening, and either get back in sync if you can, or recognize that maybe a partner doesn't want to dance the same way, doesn't want to dance anymore. And as terrible as that will feel, as difficult as it will feel, if you're coming from a place of knowing who you are, aligned with your values, you're going to want to do differently for yourself.
Right.
And ask for better for yourself, a better match, a better opportunity. And that's okay too, because, what the focus, of course, is on how do men level up and show up for these relationships. Sometimes the best way to show that you are healthy in this relationship is to recognize when it's no longer working, and to take the steps in a way of integrity to move away from the relationship, rather than blow it up, rather than get passive aggressive, rather than intrigue with that woman at work or whatever, or lose yourself to online porn or any of those things. Hit it head on, address it, because you did make an agreement with this person. You should have consideration for that person. And in that situation, if the person is going to be hurting because of this, even more of a responsibility to show up, be honest about it, be open, and do the work on oneself, and allow that person to feel the way they're going to feel, to find either what's best for the relationship going forward, or to give each of you the best possible way to detach, move on, in a way that when she or he is walking away, they don't feel like I was irreparably harmed by this.
One of the biggest struggles I have, because I learned to be very passive aggressive. And then I'm like, I really got to work on not doing that. Mm-hmm. And that is like one of the things I do like daily. It's like, are you being passive? You know, what is going on in my day?
That's a check-in for you?
100%.
Okay.
And it's something I think what you were saying is, and to kind of summarize what you're saying is, take on the conflict. You know, if you don't, then you're going to create chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And you're both going to hurt.
And you're going to hurt tremendously.
And somebody's going to do something stupid.
Yeah.
And somebody's going to do something they're really going to regret. Even if you fix the relationship and move on, or if it ends, you've just kind of stabbed each other.
Yeah.
And there's more wounds to have to heal from. And that's something, you know, we spend so much time on the art of developing relationships. Mm-hmm. We don't spend nearly as much time on the art of moving out of relationships.
And there's such a time saver. Mm-hmm. If you're just going to deal with the confrontation then and there, rather than being, you know, avoidant or passive aggressive or whatever, it's going to save you years, if not decades, of pain.
And you can feel better about, like I've had romantic relationships since my divorce, which was a number of years ago now, 13, 14 years ago. I've had successful relationships that have ended. Mm-hmm. And I had an increasing scale of standard. What I was hoping to do. My number one was, I do not want to blow one up by being unfaithful. Mm-hmm. I was able to do that, to be in relationships that ended where I wasn't unfaithful in the relationship, where I wasn't passive aggressive, at least, or I was better at it than I was before, where I communicated vulnerability. I might've gotten smacked in the face from it because it wasn't received well, or I didn't do it well, or I vomited more than I shared. But at least I was bringing myself to the game. I was showing up better than I did. And so I've had a number of ended relationships that I all consider to be successful, in that even though they ended and I wasn't happy when some of them ended, they weren't happy when other ones ended, I didn't do anything that I wasn't upfront about. I didn't do anything that was untoward. I didn't do anything in secret. I did the best I could, and I was as vulnerable and honest about it as I could. To me, that was a success. Yeah. And that helped me not worry so much about the next relationship.
It is so night and day when you take the time to recognize those issues within yourself and being like, I got to work on this. This is what I need to do before getting into anything else. It's very liberating, and you can be able to fall back on yourself and go, this is what I held myself accountable to, and this is how I'm going to have my, you know, my boundaries and how I want to live my life, versus the other way, which is just the outcomes don't come out very well, and you can start seeing that difference in the outcomes in the relationships and stuff. It's us participating in our own life. 100%.
It's us showing up to be a part of the human race. And that's the only chance we've got, right? We're going to go through problems. We're going to go through breakups. We're going to go through grief. We're going to go through all the things that life throws at us. But what our coaching is about is helping people recognize that A, that's how it's going to be. B, the only place you can be is being right here where you are right now, and you can deal with whatever's coming at you. You can. And this is all about growth. It's not about outcome. The growth is about continuing to grow. It's not the outcome at the end, because the outcome, then you're shooting for something that might be artificial. Right. Growth is not.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. You want to enjoy the process, not the end result. If you're focused on the end result, it's never going to happen the way you want it to. Man. You know,
he couldn't have said it any better.
I know.
Well, you're welcome.
That was great. That was great.
That was really good.
You can use it.
Okay, write that
down. I think we just have a few minutes left, but I wanted to kind of fall back on something you mentioned earlier, and I think this might be helpful for guys out there. The 6 pillars and the community comment. Can you talk a little more about what that means, and especially for the guy that is either in a relationship that's long-term and he's starting to shut down? Usually those guys, I think in general, don't really have a large group of guy friends, or... And I'm saying this from experience, they've gotten out of a long-term relationship, a marriage, and they're somewhere where they're sort of isolated. They don't have a lot of friends. You know, what is the importance of having a community around for those guys?
I would say, as an example of something that they could do is like what JD did, join a spin class. Now, I'm not saying you joined a spin class because of what you went through, but it's something that you can do.
In part, I did.
That puts you in an environment with people that the spotlight's not on you. There's no pressure to be like, I gotta, make friends with these people. No, you're just showing up and riding on a bike. You're putting in a lot of effort. But, it's a workout class, right? Or, some sort of activity. Join like your local basketball, team or whatever. Do something that puts you in an environment with people where you're doing something communal together, but it's not about how well you do, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's a great point, especially for doing something athletic, spin class, doing a martial arts, something in a community where you can start making new friends, new relationships. I think that's fantastic.
Because, if you're like in a spot where you're trying to build, putting yourself in a situation where performance and all eyes are on you is not going to be great for you. It's not going to be comfortable because you're not even sure who you are right now. So how can you show up at your best? So when you do something that's like in a group situation, you keep going. It gets you around people. You might only say hi right off the bat to people, but you keep going and going and you build up relationships. And then maybe after, the class, now you're having coffee with people. Everybody goes out to lunch. Right. And you started naturally with low fear of rejection. Start building a community with people.
That's a great point. Low fear of rejection, because the guys are already going through it. And not to keep bringing it on myself, but yeah, it's after all of the, a divorce and struggling at work, it's struggling with relationships, personal, family, all that stuff. That reel starts going in your head. Wow, everything sucks. I must suck. And then it goes.
Well, and it's Ashley's spot on. Yeah. The things that you can do that engage you in the world. So what I tell clients going through something like this is be curious when you're out among people and verbalize when you can. So when you're at the grocery store and somebody's reaching for something, you can ask, could I help you with that? Ask the checker, how's your day going? And mean it.
Yes.
They'll know it and they'll respond. And they'll ask you, how's your day going? Then tell them. Now, you don't dump on their shoes if it's a bad day. You can say, it's a bit of a tougher day today, but it's nice to talk to you. I hope things get better. Practice that. Be curious about that. Notice what other people are doing. Notice how other people are. Notice what draws you in of something you might want to try to do or something maybe that you got away from that you want to go back towards. All of those things can be really good for community. And then the other thing I would add to that's related is for men to notice or just to approach this idea that every relationship one has, even if it's just the casual one of the coworker at work who's across the cubicle, every relationship that we engage in can have value and worth. And if we say, well, that one's not as important because it's not a partnership, we lose the opportunity to see the value and worth we can get from that. So we can have our close, almost like a target in archery. The middle circle is the closest people we've got. Then we have the steadily ones moving outward. Every part of that target, anybody who fits in that zone is going to have value and worth. And some people move in closer over time. Some people move out. Some people stay right where they are. But if we put ourselves in a spot where we think the only thing that's going to bring us value and worth in relationships is that romantic partner that we want at the center, we're losing sight of all the various types of connection and relationship and value and love and worthiness that we can have in our lives. We have to be able to connect to that.
Yeah, never stop.
Yeah, it doesn't stop.
Yeah. I was thinking about what you were just saying. Notice your surroundings. I think when guys start shutting down, they just become oblivious. They have no peripheral self-awareness. And I was thinking that might be just a reflection. How is that going to reflect on the person you're with? If you're not even aware of stuff you're knocking over, how is she going to be like, he's not even aware of, the glass that's on the table. How is he going to protect me if something happens for walking on the sidewalk?
He hasn't showered in 3 days.
He's smelling funky and he doesn't even realize it.
Well, and that's why those other pillars are so important, because if you intentionally engage in those, you're taking care of all of that. You're taking care of getting better sleep. You're taking care of eating better. You're taking care of movement. Movement and exercise can be two different things. Movement's out walking around, exercise is really hitting something hard. You do those things, you're probably going to be aware a lot more of taking care of those ins and outs. And they kind of takes care of themselves after the time. That's what our clients send to notice is like, I don't know when I started doing that. It's when you started paying attention to the 6 pillars.
And they probably start walking a little more upright. And they probably have a little more confidence going on. Yeah, and they probably start showering.
And they feel better about themselves.
And they feel better about themselves.
Yep. It's all an inside job in the end.
I really like the whole talk to everybody. You can talk to the person that's checking you out at the grocery store. You can talk to the person that's, ringing you up, getting your clothes. You can talk to, it's okay to say, hey, how's it going?
And say thank you.
Say thank you.
Say thank you.
Yeah, show some appreciation.
Yeah. It's and in the world we live in right now, those types of gestures and moments are going farther and farther for more and more people than ever before.
And it's okay if the other night I was meeting a buddy and I sat at the bar for a little bit waiting for him, and I was to the bartender, hey, how's it going, man? What's happening? And he just kind of was like, what's up? It was just like a total just shut down. He's like, don't even talk to me type of thing. He's like, I'm a bartender. I don't want to talk.
Yeah.
It was like, but you're a bartender. You should be talking. Yeah. But I just kind of gave him a high. But you're going to get rejection kind of like that. You're going to get things where it's just going to be like, I don't want to talk to you. And it's like, that's okay.
And it doesn't need to be about you in that situation.
Absolutely. And sometimes you have no idea, like you just smiling, saying hello can actually have an impact. And maybe he wasn't ready at that time to address it, but he'll think about it later.
Yeah, he did have like a double take. He was like, why are you talking to me?
Because maybe most people just look at him like, you're here to serve me. Give me a drink.
True.
And he's like, wow, they saw me as a human being actually working.
Or they just dump and they don't ask about him. Yeah. Or he's worried he's going to hear the same thing time and time again, because he probably does.
So where can people find you?
Everywhere. No.
Everywhere.
We're omnipresent.
Well, if they want to connect with the show, the podcast, the show is called Staying Power, and it's on wherever you get your podcasts. It's also on 1150 AM KKNW in Seattle, so you can find it there. You can reach out to us directly. Email is stayingpowershow@gmail.com. And if you find us, one of our episodes, our show notes have all the other connections to us. So our Patreon site, our social media feeds. We have a YouTube channel coming soon. That's the best way. But we love to hear from people. And we're available for coaching, certainly, but we're also available for opinions on something, right? If somebody has a problem or something like that, we're more than willing to chime in. And we've done that before. But that's the best way to find us.
Okay, perfect. All right.
Cool.
Well, thank you both for joining me today.
Thank you
so much for having us on.
Anytime.
This was great.
Fantastic.
Both of you are always welcome back.
Oh, appreciate that.
Yeah.
Appreciate that. And we're gonna bring you on ours, because this is an important thing that you're doing, and it's an important set of conversations to be putting out there. So I've talking about feeling connected. This has felt like a very connected conversation from start to finish, and that's been really good. Yeah, it's been really
I love
good.
it. Yeah,
it's been really good.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah. All right. So if you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. We'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences. So connect with us on social media. Look for the Glen Gilbert Connection, or send an email to the Glen Gilbert Connection at gmail.com. Stay tuned for our next episode. We're going to discuss more relationship dynamics. And until next time, take care.